Hello everyone and welcome back to BackToFrankBlack.com. This is Thomas J Wright week, and it's actually fortuitous that we're talking about Thomas J Wright this week because one of the things I've been wanting to do was to dive right into the theology of Millennium. Now I know what you're thinking, theology? Don't you mean mythology? No, actually we're going to talk about the theology of Millennium. And I wanted to take a look at some of the episodes that dealt with the theology of Millennium. And luckily Thomas J Wright directed one of the key episodes, Powers, Principalities, Thrones, and Dominions. Now I know some of you are asking, what do you mean by theology of the show? Well, in many shows that deal with matters of a spiritual, religious nature, they often deal with their own kind of made-up little realities of how things work. But in Millennium, they actually deal with the ongoing struggle between good and evil, God and the devil, angels and demons. And this starts out kind of peppered in the show, and then it actually kind of comes to a head in season 2, and then largely gets ignored for a long time in season 3 until Jordan starts coming into her powers and it starts to kind of reawaken in Frank's life. But starting here in episode, episode 16, I think it was, of the series, Powers, Principalities, Thrones, and Dominions kind of cements it together. Now, this isn't the first time that we've seen characters like Legion, the demon force that is coming onto Earth, and it's not the first time we've heard about angels, and it's not the last time we deal with them either. But when Frank starts dealing with evil, he has these kind of demonic visions, and he figures it's kind of just an appearance of evil. However, in the episode The Judge, he gets an offer from the judge to work for him, and he says, "I am Legion." And he even references the quote from the Bible about the demons. And he says, if I'm hard to get a hold of, don't think of things to, I forget exactly the line, but he basically says, basically don't take it for granted. And we find out later that the judge dies. So for Frank, he thinks, well, the judge is gone, and that's the end of that, and we don't have to worry about it. But then later in the season, we see the appearance of Lucy Butler. And Lucy Butler comes in as the kind of overriding, leading force for the demons. And she actually helps to kill Frank Black's friend, Bob Bletcher. And then, she, later on in the series, you think of her really as Legion. You think of her as being, the face of the evil. But here in this episode, Powers, Principalities, Thrones, and Dominions, we actually find out that this demonic force that Lucy Butler is a part of is much bigger. And Al Pepper, the lawyer that we meet in this episode, he actually steps forward and offers Frank the same job that the judge did. And this is where Frank begins to realize that there's something more going on. Something between these two characters has carried over, and he begins to realize that Legion is more than just a nickname. Now, why does this really fit in with Thomas J Wright week? I mean, okay, he directed the episode, but so far I'm just kind of talking about the overall story arc. Shouldn't this be a show about the writers? Okay, fair enough. Let's talk a little bit about the directing. Thomas J Wright is one of those directors who I don't think of as an artiste. I think of him as a craftsman. Now, what's the difference? A lot of people, when they come in and they want to film an episode of a TV show, or they get their first big break in a movie, they feel this need to throw a bunch of weird stuff at you. I had to experiment with angles, they say, or I was trying to get some crazy montage to get this idea along. And they come up with all this weird stuff, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's not Thomas J Wright. He's not like that. He is a very powerful and solid director. He's the type of guy who says, we need to make this work, and we need to make this work right. And he's the guy who can go in there and get the job done. I don't know what this guy's really like in his home life. I don't know what he does on the weekends. I could easily see him as the guy who gets home from a hard day's work, cracks open a beer, just sits on the front porch and drinks it in. He just seems like a really down-to-earth guy, and his style is very realistic. A lot of times when you deal with shows that deal with angels and demons and talk about God and the devil, they get really, I don't know, they get really hammy, really corny, really, it's hard to take it seriously a lot of times for these people. And he has this ability to take something that could be so incredibly corny and make it seem so real and powerful because he's just that good. He's so skilled at what he does. Now, one thing he's talked about on MillenniuM, I think in some of the special bonus features, is he talks about how they used a lot of found light. And that may have actually been a directive that was given to him from the producers. But the idea is when he walks into a room to film a scene, he doesn't set up a lot of special lights. You've all seen it where someone walks into a room and they flip on a light switch and suddenly this huge light, off screen seems to pop on and bathe the whole room in light. It's much more than what's coming from that little desk lamp. And he's not one of those type guys. He really walks into a room, and if there's light coming through the window, that's your light source. If someone flips on a desk lamp, that's your light source. He's not adding a bunch of crazy TV lighting. He's doing things naturally and very realistically. He's also one of those guys that if you watch a lot of his shots, he composes his shots very rigidly. There's not a whole lot of, what do they call it, with the gyroscopic cameras, like the Panavision Glide Cam. He's not doing a lot of these 360 shots. He's not doing a lot of big crane shots, everything like that. He's really putting you in that scene and not doing anything weird to kind of take you out of it and play with these camera tricks. He's really one of those guys that really puts that scene together and puts you right in the heart of it, and everything about it feels true. And that's really what I like about his style and why it works so well here on MillenniuM. So in Powers, Principalities, Thrones, and Dominions, we have Frank Black coming to the realization that Legion, the judge, was not just this crazy one-off guy. And that Lucy Butler was not just this crazy, weird woman who was playing mind tricks. He really begins to understand that there's a war happening. There's really a battle between good and evil, and he's not going crazy. He just happens to be in the middle of it. And that's one of the things I love about this episode. And this is really the episode that I think cemented me diehard as a fan. Because this is where I began to realize that these little threads that they had been laying out are starting to come together. And you get this overreaching arc of a storyline. And that storyline actually is what progresses through season 2. And you see it reemerge in season 3 and really come out towards the end of season 3. It's this idea that there's something bigger, something otherworldly that's going on, and we're somehow caught in the middle of it. And that's why I love Powers, Principalities, Thrones, and Dominions.
You dirty rotten